find out in a second when he pops or not. Oh, order. Emily Darlington to move the motion.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairpersonship. I want to begin today's debate with a quote from GAVI's inaugural board chair, Nelson Mandela, over 20 years ago. Life or death for a very young child too often depends on whether or not he or she is born in a country where vaccines are available or not. And it's the injustice that he spoke of that these organisations that we're talking about today, GAVI, the Global Fund, and others, have fought against since every day that it was established in 2000. This is a fight that has led to more than 1 billion children vaccinated in more than 18 million avoidable deaths prevented in low-income countries. But this is also a Labour and UK story. This is something where we had consensus right across. But at the start, it was Tony Blair's championing of GAVI in the launch in 2000, and Gordon Brown's leading role in the creation of the International Finance Facility for Immunisation that helped fund GAVI's work. And it is our government, a Labour government, who have helped, who this organisation continues to turn to for leadership, global leadership. It is through these organisations that we've cut the combined death rate from AIDS-related illnesses, TB, malaria, by an incredible 61%, saving 65 million lives. Childhood mortality in under fives has been reduced by over 50%, and vaccine-preventable deaths by over 70% in the places where GAVI operates. And thanks to these initiatives, the coverage of key treatments for treatment and prevention of interventions for HIV, TB and malaria. In countries where the Global Fund invests, we've seen TB coverage increase from 45% in 2010 to 70%. In 2010, the percentage of the population with access to long-lasting insecticide-treated nets to prevent malaria was only 30%. In 2023, it reached 57%. And in 2010, only 22% of people living with HIV were on antiviral retroviral therapy. In 2023, it's reached 78%. And this is the UK's legacy. We hosted the first replenishment fund for GAVI in 2011, and we hosted the last one in 2020. And we will be co-hosting the Global Fund replenishment this year alongside South Africa. So this isn't just about helping these other countries. This is actually about the UK's own soft power, our own security, and the resilience of the NHS. And let's talk a bit more about the UK contribution, because it's not just the government's contribution, it's actually the contribution of amazing life sciences companies here in the UK. The UK Vaccine Network helped develop life-saving vaccines such as malaria and the Oxford AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccines, which have both been procured and rolled out by GAVI worldwide. Between 2016 and 2022, we invested £134 million to develop new vaccines for epidemic-prone diseases. An additional £103.5 million committed in 2023 to support affordable vaccine development. The investments that have been supported, including the COVID-19 AstraZeneca vaccine, RTSS and malaria vaccine, have delivered the COVID vaccine 3 billion doses supplied globally, estimated to save over 6 million lives in the first year of rollout, distributed... Yes.
I'm grateful for my honourable member friend for giving way and for securing this very important debate. Will she agree with me that it is work in malaria vaccines and these sorts of things which has then enabled us to move quickly when COVID and other infections occurred? And actually it's these investigations into neglected diseases which has really been the springboard for many other diseases that threaten the entire world.
My honourable friend is very, very right. Actually, it is through programmes like this that we develop the expertise and the ability to rapidly create RNA-based vaccines that led to the creation of our own vaccines here in the UK, allowed us not only to protect our own population, but allowed us also to contribute to protecting biosecurity globally by ensuring the fast spread of those vaccines. And actually, when you talk about malaria, it's the RTSS malaria vaccine, 18 million doses created here in the UK that have been allocated to 12 African countries. We've administered over 1.7 million children in pilot countries, and we've been able to reduce those malarial cases. And as climate change hits, we know malaria is moving north. So again, this isn't just about protecting children in those countries, it's protecting children here at home. I'd just like to share some of the quotes that were sent to me when scientists at AstraZeneca heard that we were doing this debate, and they just wanted to send a clear message. Sandy Douglas at the University of Oxford, who is one of the 6 scientists who created the COVID-19 vaccine created by AstraZeneca, said, "GAVI brings Britain's scientific leadership to the world, and this brings investment back into the UK's world-leading research, generating a virtuous cycle of innovation." Also, GSK have reached out and wanted their voice heard in today's debate. And they said UK life sciences are critical economic driver to improve health and outcomes and transform lives in the UK and around the world, including in the global south. Scientific innovation underpins national and global health security and economic prosperity at a time of growing uncertainty. GSK and its HIV business are proud of the contribution we make to deliver these priorities. And most importantly, they say, the UK's 2025 investment in GAVI and the Global Fund will be critical in building long-term sustainable access to health technologies at scale. So this isn't just about what we are doing in the Global South and in other countries that need our partnership on this. This is about what we are doing to build economic growth, which is the single most important mission of this government. But the reality is this mission isn't over, and we can go through many of the numbers, but I know that some of my honourable friends are going to pick up some of this. But what I do want to say is when we are looking at cuts to international aid funding, this could be as much, if we include the US, the UK, Germany and France and the Netherlands, who provide 90% of the HIV funding response. This could lead to cuts from between 8%, if we do our job well, to 70%. And the modelling done by the Burnett Institute estimates that that would result in between 4.4 to 10.8 million additional new HIV cases by 2030, and between 770,000 to 2.9 million HIV-related deaths in children and adults by 2030. Absolutely.
Thank you, Ms. Jardine. My honourable friend is making an excellent speech, and I congratulate you on securing today's debate. GAVI has obviously been one of the most successful ever development initiatives, with over 1 billion children being routinely immunised against some of the world's deadliest diseases. Despite GAVI's success, over 1.5 million children still continue to die from vaccine-preventable diseases. Does she agree with me that the UK needs to show leadership in ensuring that immunisation remains a funding priority for the UK, and that the government, as a board member and as a strong donor, should continue to fund GAVI and prioritise life-saving vaccinations?
I thank my honourable friend. I absolutely do agree. It reminds me of something my gran always said to me. She said, if you don't have your health, what do you have? And I know it sounds quite meet, but it's something we all understand. If you don't have your health, we cannot talk about improving the economies in countries around the world. We cannot talk about improving our global security around the world. If you don't have your health, what do you have? And this is why this is such a crucial initiative. We also know that these diseases cross borders. Milton Keynes has some of the highest HIV rates in the UK. And from my perspective, what we're talking about today is also about protecting our constituents. If we can reach the levels that we need to in terms of HIV transmission, we are protecting the UK population as well. So I'm really encouraged by the UK's commitment to co-host the Global Fund's 8th replenishment alongside the Government of South Africa, and by the statement by the Prime Minister made that although we are cutting ODA down, we would continue to support global health. Now, these are the absolutely best and most efficient ways to work in these partnerships of getting money to the ground. Because while it brings an estimated 530 million potentially of investment into R&D in the UK, it also is about balancing the investment and ensuring that those countries that can are contributing to these programs. So this isn't charity, this is true partnership. This is about us working together, building capacity. And this has the public support. We know in various different polling that using R&D, our expertise in life sciences to help save lives here and abroad is absolutely supported by about 3/4 of the British public. So just in conclusion, because I know a lot of other people want to speak, this year is absolutely pivotal. The money that's being requested by GAVI, by the Global Fund, by UnitAid, by others, the partnership money, is not just about cash, it's about partnership and leadership that we have provided as the UK government. And my call to this government, my call to the Minister, and it's an area I know he cares a lot about, is that even despite these cuts, these short-term cuts where the Prime Minister said it's one of the most difficult decisions he's had to make and that we would look to increase in the future, we don't use the fact that the replenishment is in this time when our budget's at its lowest, not to at least match what we have pledged in the past. Hear, hear.
Can I remind members that they should bob if they wish to be called in debate, and unfortunately because of the popularity, I'll have to impose a time limit of 3 minutes from the beginning and go to the front bench at 2:38 p.m. Thank you. David Mundell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'm very grateful to you for stepping into the chair, because I was due to chair this debate and wouldn't have been able to contribute, and I very much wanted to do that. With restricted time, I don't want to rehearse some of the discussions that we had with Baroness Chapman in the International Development Committee earlier in the week, other than to say, as the Honourable Lady, and I do congratulate her on securing the debate, has just said, a contribution to GAVI and the Global Fund is not charity. It is a strategic investment by the United Kingdom. And whilst we have to just deal with the reality, as the Minister's colleague set out, that these cuts are happening, and then we have to make the case as to what should happen in that environment. And I've always believed that aid spending should have maximum impact and have maximum returns. And moreover, it should be in keeping with public expectations of food in bellies and shots in arms. And both the Global Fund and GAVI deliver that. GAVI, as the Honourable Gentleman said, has immunised over 1 billion children, reducing vaccine-preventable child deaths by 70% in the 78 low-income countries it operates in. That is 18.8 million lives saved, children who are growing up healthy, going to school and contributing to their communities. And that is a huge impact delivered from that contribution. Likewise, the Global Fund has saved an estimated 65 million lives since 2002. It has cut the combined death rate from AIDS, TB and malaria by 61%. These are staggering achievements and should not be discounted. Indeed, GAVI and the Global Fund are two of the most successful and impactful health programmes in history. Clearly, they meet the requirement for maximum impact and return. They are, though, only possible because of sustained, coordinated international investment. Alongside Unit Aid, they are part of a habitat of organisations that have sustained progress in our understanding of our diseases, our ability to deploy medicines and improve health systems. So I join with the Honourable Lady in encouraging the Minister to sustain the existing contributions to both GAVI and the Global Fund. He will be aware that in the last Parliament I lobbied my own government very, very hard to get that £1 billion into the Global Fund. Let's keep it at least at that and keep the contribution to GAVI. They make a difference.
Hear, hear.
Steve Race.
Thank you. As a pleasure to serve under your Cheshire and congratulate my honourable friend for Milton Keynes North. Central while securing this debate. I refer members to my register of interests. Alongside the Right Honourable Member for Dumfriesshire, Clydesdale and Tweedale, I'm proud to co-chair the All-Party Parliamentary Group on Nutrition for Development. Nutrition and immunisation are closely linked. Children with poor nutrition are often those who are most vulnerable to infectious diseases and need protection from vaccines, yet vaccines are less effective in children who are malnourished and often don't trigger strong immunity. The children that specialised immunisation programmes are trying to reach are also the least likely to have access to food and nutrition services. Immunisation has the most impact when it's delivered alongside other interventions and integrated into primary health systems. By addressing both undernutrition and under-immunisation simultaneously, we can significantly improve both health outcomes and vaccine efficacy, as well as provide interventions in the most cost-effective way. I saw this for myself on a recent visit to Isiolo province in Kenya, hosted by UNICEF and organised by United Against Malnutrition and Hunger. We saw how in rural areas, nutrition interventions are delivered alongside vaccinations, healthcare, education and maternal healthcare to ensure that people have wraparound healthcare interventions that save lives. This is funded by UK development assistance and delivered by partners including Action on Hunger. And Mrs Chairman, if a woman walks for 20 kilometres or more with their children once a week for nutrition, they're less likely to walk the same distance at a different time to a different place for vaccines. Integrating these services is paramount to good healthcare. This February, ahead of the Nutrition for Growth Summit, I met with GAVI's CEO, Dr. Sanya Nishtar, to discuss the important role that GAVI is playing in delivering these integrated services. Dr. Nishtar spoke about the new $30 million programme to integrate nutrition and immunisation interventions in Ethiopia through the Children's Investment Fund Foundation, founded by the UK, UNICEF Ethiopia and GAVI, with support from the UK through GAVI's matching fund mechanism. Ethiopia has one of the highest numbers, staggering 1.1 million of zero-dose children, those who have not received a single dose of routine vaccines, a statistic exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic, conflict and displacement. This pilot programme aims to reach around 140,000 of these zero-dose children in areas where the dual burden of malnutrition and infectious disease is amongst the highest, providing cost-effective and efficient interventions to help children survive and thrive. Of course.
I thank my honourable friend for giving way. Does my honourable friend agree with me that even before the devastating cuts to foreign aid by the UK, there was instability in funding for global vaccination programmes? We've already heard that over 1.5 million children die from preventable diseases. So does he agree with me that the reduction in foreign aid by the UK will have a devastating impact on the ability to provide vaccines to these children, and it will end up costing lives?
Thank you for the intervention. I'll leave the answer to that question to the Minister, but I hope that there will be an impact assessment to sort of properly map our interventions in the future. Integration costs money, and GAVI can't do this integration without financial support. And I hope that when the Minister is assessing our contribution to this year's GAVI replenishment, he'll look at including support for nutrition integration. Can he tell me what plans his department has to integrate nutrition and immunisations more widely? I just want to touch on one issue very briefly. The UK's contribution to GAVI has not only helped save lives, it's also contributed to the UK's health security by reducing the risk of global health emergencies and pandemics. It's brought money into the British economy through reputational and research returns, and it showcases UK's leadership on the global stage. Within my own constituency, the Medical Research Council-funded Centre for Medical Mycology at the University of Exeter works closely with GAVI, carrying out world-leading research into deadly fungal diseases and developing vaccines for some of the most widespread causes of death and disablement in developing countries. So, does the Minister agree with me that the UK's continued participation in GAVI and the Global Fund not only is the right thing to do because it saves lives around the world, but it's also strategically sound as it supports our growth strategy and is an important part of delivering both on our industrial strategy goals and our national health goals? Thank you.
Kimberlin.
To serve under your chairpersonship for the first time, and I congratulate the Honourable Member for Milton Keynes for securing what is an important debate. In fact, it's just 6 months shy of 5 years since I had my own backbench debate on global vaccine access, albeit then in the context of the global COVID pandemic. And I look back on what the then Labour spokesperson said with interest, the Right Honourable Member for Wigan, who was then Shadow Foreign Secretary. And what I found in her remarks was a consistent emphasis on working bilaterally to tackle global health crises and through these efforts to tackle poverty and inequality, and that this was not just the practical but the moral thing to do. And I really hope we haven't forgotten what we should have learned from the COVID pandemic about how fast a disease can turn into a global threat, about how good health produces safe and secure countries, and about how terrifying it was to have to reckon with the realities of the pandemic in respects of all aspects of our lives. And I do hope the Government will be thinking about that as it approaches the spending review. But, Ms Jardine, GAVI and the Global Fund have been an incredible success, and it's something we ought to be able to celebrate. The UK has been a leading force in these efforts on the international stage, and this is something that we can be proud of. And it is something that bolsters our reputation, our standing, and it forms part of our global soft power. The need to fund these programmes won't last forever. 15 years ago, lower-income countries were only able to fund, on average, 10% of the costs of their vaccine programmes. And over the next 5 years, it's estimated that they will cover up to 40% of the costs on average. Some countries are already there, with Indonesia now a donor to GAVI rather than a recipient. And let's not forget, Ms Jardine, that we need the world to be vaccinated. Disease knows no borders. Disease leads to poverty, which leads to global instability. We also have seen the more immediate and direct effects from global vaccine and treatment availability through the demand and the growth of our life sector sciences back here at home. And I'd like the Minister to tell me that that isn't the sort of growth that this Government is looking for. These investments benefit us up and down the UK. And in my own constituency, the University of St Andrews reported just last month that the Department for Infection and Global Health Division was awarded career funding on identifying new therapeutic strategies for infectious diseases. But, Ms Jardine, I've almost reached the end of my remarks, but I do have to mention the elephant in the room, the shrinking ODA budget. I have read the statistics, as others have here, that spending on GAVI and Global Fund gives some of the best financial returns on spending. And just a few weeks ago, I attended a meeting here in Parliament with the Chief Executive of the World Bank. He was clear that his role and that of his organisation is to create opportunities in the Global South to develop their economies and reduce emigration from them. And given the Government's other priorities, such as immigration, investing in multilateral ODA activities makes sense. So I really urge the Minister to look again at that cut, how long it is needed for, and that they will be engaging openly with the One Campaign's pre-action letter questioning legality of the current cut to point 3. Thank you.
Central for securing this debate. I mean, let's be honest, most of the public don't know what the GAVI is or the Global Fund is, but what they do know is the life-saving power of vaccinations, because they, like all of us, will have benefited from them when they were children, and their children would have benefited from them. But we know that too many children around the world do not have those life-saving vaccinations available. And I think in the context of these debates, we have to remember the people's lives who are at the heart of it. I worked for Save the Children for many years, and I saw firsthand the impact of these immunisations and the progress that has been made. And some of that is at risk in the light of the context of what is happening around the world. So it's a really important debate today. I wanted to just talk about a few areas. We've covered quite a lot of it, but we know that 1.5 million children continue to die from vaccine-preventable diseases. That's more than the population of Cyprus, an entire island of children dying every year. Vaccination and ending AIDS, tuberculosis and malaria are not only the right things to do, but as we have heard, they are in our own national interest and a smart thing to do. They stop disease reaching our shores, they help to support healthy and prosperous nations, and they help to prevent future pandemics. And they're also vital in the context of climate change, as many of the world's deadliest diseases are very susceptible to climate change and increases the risks of it spreading. And we know that doing this, tackling those diseases, is best done and best value for the British taxpayer through GAVI and the Global Fund. So we know we have to maximise our aid budget at this difficult time, and we know we have to invest it in the right things and in the things that will deliver best value for the British taxpayer. So investing in GAVI and the Global Fund is simply a no-brainer. I wanted to just touch on the women and girls. I asked the Minister earlier this week if investing in women and girls remained a priority for this government. I was reassured by his answer. I then raised that at the Select Committee with the Minister, and we did hear that actually our approach is more mainstreaming gender equality, and it wasn't listed as one of our 3 top priorities. So, you know, while I accept we can mainstream gender, I do want to hope that the Minister will apply about how we will ensure that women and girls do remain at the heart of programmes like GAVI and the Global Fund. Because, for example, every week 4,000 adolescent girls and young women between 15 to 24 years become infected with HIV globally, and 310,000 of those infections are in sub-Saharan Africa. So as we look at our aid budget, we know it has to be focused on tackling extreme poverty, and Africa is one of the areas that we do need to focus on. Yes, I will give way.
I thank my honourable friend for giving way. She talks about vaccine inequality in women and girls, but would she agree with me that the global GAVI programme helps address the inequalities that people have faced? And during the COVID pandemic, it's clearly reported that the richer, more affluent countries had priority over those vaccines compared to low and middle income countries. So GAVI is essential to help perpetuate equality.
Yeah, I totally agree with the Honourable Member, and in fact what we've seen in GAVI is that countries that were primarily recipients before have now become donors themselves, such as Indonesia. So it's a clear pathway to transitions into different roles within the global economy as well. As I think other people have mentioned brilliant examples of science and innovation in their constituency, and I did want to mention the John Innes Centre at the Norwich Research Park, which isn't technically in my constituency, but it is in Norwich, and it is doing really pioneering work, particularly around malaria. And as we have heard, that is helping to save lives internationally, but it's also creating jobs at home and generating economic growth. I just wanted to finish really by saying we do need a new architecture for international development. We do have to accept the world that we are in, and that we do have to challenge ourselves. We do have to challenge ourselves as to why some of the public support for aid has been lost, although I do think when we look at some of the polling, it does show that for life-saving interventions like vaccines, there is quite a lot of support for it. But both GAVI and the Global Fund, I think, show us what that new architecture could look like in terms of working together globally through multilateral institutions, pooling our resources to maximise our impact. So this isn't the time to take our foot off the accelerator. We have made huge progress in this area, both in tackling disease and protecting our own health security. So I'm sure the Minister will reaffirm our commitment to improving the health of some of the poorest communities in the world and delivering a safer and more prosperous future for us all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. We're now going to struggle to get everybody in, so if we could keep any interventions very brief, please. Jim Shannon.
And also can I commend the Honourable Lady from Milton Keynes Central for setting the scene so very well. A terribly incredible debate, and that's why we're all here to make a contribution. GAVI has so far immunised some 1.1 billion children. It's estimated that I've heard of more than 18.8 million deaths globally. So if you want a success story and something that's worth investing in, this is a scheme. Childhood mortality and under 5s have been reduced by over 50%, vaccine preventable deaths down by 70%. Again, a reason for supporting this. Like the Honourable Lady who spoke before me, I want to focus upon women and girls in particular, because I think it's important that we look at where the impact is from there. It's the fact that women and girls are disproportionately affected by infectious diseases. Targeted investments in their health can drive broader social and economic progress. Indeed, vaccination results in better health, which in turn supports the gender equality by enabling women and girls to learn, work and take an active role in their community, to promote them as people, as individuals in their lives. Women and girls account for some 63% of all HIV infections in sub-Saharan Africa. Malaria and pregnancy leads to over 10,000 maternal deaths, 200,000 infant deaths. Women and girls, these aren't just figures. These are families, these are individuals, these are mothers, these are children. Tuberculosis remains a leading infectious cause of death amongst women of reproductive age. The Global Fund provides some 76% of all international financing for TB. But because of the US aid cuts and the UK's government's decision to cut ODA, this will hit back and knock back the very scheme that's done so much in advancing and moving forward. So again, I look to the Minister. The Minister is always very responsive to us, and I know he hasn't got the purse strings, but I'm pretty sure his response will be helpful. GAVI also funds maternal tetanus immunisation and has helped to eliminate maternal and neonatal tetanus in over 20 countries. All these things are happening because of GAVI and these organisations. So it's work in preventing malaria in children and pregnant women is something can't be ignored either. To conclude, I'd like to ask the Minister, in terms of the spending review process, how the FCDO is making the case for the work that the Global Fund, GAVI and UNITAID do in prioritising women and girls' health, supporting gender equality, and further discussions are being held about a change of investment into this global fund. How can government ensure that these women and girls, so often ignored and put down in their own communities, can have access to the most basic of immunisation? And will the Minister commit to ensuring that we do our part, this government does our part, for the most vulnerable women and children throughout the world? The UK have done good work. We must continue in the most cost-effective way possible. And I know the Minister is seeking, I believe, to find this balance, and I wish him and government every success in this endeavour. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. GAVI, the Vaccine Alliance and the Global Fund do in fight against AIDS and malaria. As the chair of the All-Party Parliamentary Group on Global TB, I want to focus my remarks on the need to secure continued funding for programmes to tackle tuberculosis. TB remains one of the most significant infectious diseases worldwide. It was responsible for the deaths of 1.25 million people in 2023. The World Health Organization says that it is highly likely that the disease has returned to being the world's leading cause of death from a single infectious agent, following 3 years in which it was replaced by COVID. TB is, of course, a preventable and curable disease, but if it is not treated, someone who has active TB can spread the disease to as many as 20 people each year. As we saw with how quickly COVID spread across the globe, today's globalized world means that ending TB is critically important for all of us. Indeed, TB cases in this country are currently on the rise. As we heard at the meeting of the APPG earlier this week, the latest figures indicate that last year there was a 13% increase in the number of reported cases in England. This takes TB numbers above pre-COVID-19 levels and reverses the previous downward trend. The latest figures also show that the city of Leicester is the place that has the highest rates of TB, overtaking the borough of Newham in London. Although the focus of this afternoon's debate is on global health, it is worth reflecting that this government has inherited a steady increase in the number of TB cases domestically since 2020. It is therefore in our own interest to continue to work to eradicate TB. As the leading international funder for TB programs, the Global Fund is a critical partner in helping to achieve the goal of finding and treating 45 million between 2023 and 2027. Missing people with TB, people who are not diagnosed, treated or reported, are a major challenge in the fight against the disease and help to contribute to drug-resistant TB. As drug-resistant TB does not respond to standard first-line antibiotics, treating it is costlier, complex and more prolonged. It can take 3 to 4 times as long. However, if the case numbers of drug-resistant TB continues to increase, it could eventually pose a dangerous risk to global health security, including to high-income countries. As it is the largest external source of financing for the drug-resistant TB responses in low and middle-income countries, the work of the Global Fund in this area is so important. Work is being done to safeguard the decades of progress that has been made in the fight against the disease. And thanks to the work of the Global Fund, 7.1 million people with TB were diagnosed and treated in 2023. I therefore ask the Minister to reassure this House that this government will continue to fund Global Fund to eradicate TB from the globe.
Ryan Matthews.
Thank you, Madam Jardine, and it's a pleasure to serve under your chairship. And thank you also to the Honourable Member for Milton Keynes for bringing this vital debate. The Global Fund to fight AIDS, tuberculosis and malaria has saved over 65 million lives since its inception and remains one of the most effective mechanisms we have to combat infectious diseases worldwide. Diseases whose death toll continues to rise every year, especially in some of the world's poorest regions. GAVI supports immunisation and vaccination of almost half the world's children and has prevented over 18.8 million deaths across the world. The United Kingdom has historically stood at the forefront of global health, from pioneering the invention of the vaccine and life-saving medications to supporting the NHS. Our commitment to science and health has shaped the world over. Continuing our support for GAVI and the Global Fund is not only morally correct, it's strategically wise. Why? Because disease knows no boundaries. We all learned that lesson with COVID. Infectious diseases do not only cause individual tragedy, they threaten global development and stability. They rock economies to their core. When we invest in global health systems and these organisations, we don't just save lives abroad, we protect our citizens, our constituents, by preventing future outbreaks, strengthening early warning systems and developing research that will benefit everyone. Every penny that the UK invests in GAVI and the Global Fund yields incredible returns. It provides antiretroviral therapy for people living with TB and HIV, creates global stockpiles of vaccines for Ebola, cholera and yellow fever so that any emerging pandemic can be stamped out quickly, and mosquito nets to protect children while they sleep. They help build and strengthen health systems, empower communities and promote gender equality. That it gives people a chance to live and work without risk of needless infection. Failing to fund these two vital organisations would risk reversing decades of progress that have been made. It risks letting preventable diseases kill thousands of people each year. And if we step up and maintain our support, the UK will send a clear message that we will not turn our back and that we believe in a society where no one has to die from a disease that we can treat. Jonas Salk, the inventor of the polio vaccine, said that the reward for work well done is the opportunity to do more. Let's help GAVI and the Global Alliance do more. Thank you.
Tim Rocker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairship, and thank you to my honourable friend for securing today's debate. I want to speak in strong support of continued investment in these organisations, but particularly the Global Fund to fight AIDS, tuberculosis and malaria. A partnership, as my honourable friend said, that stands as one of the most impactful in global health history. Since its founding in 2002, the Global Fund has saved more than 50 million lives. That's 50 million mothers, fathers and children who are alive today because of international collaboration, targeted investment and shared resolve. The death rate from AIDS, TB and malaria has been halved in the countries where the fund operates, and that is a success that we should all be proud of. And in an era, as colleagues have mentioned, where it seems that global cooperation is going out of fashion, here is a living, breathing example of its work. And the UK has played a major role in that success, but as people have said, with the next replenishment fast approaching, we must reaffirm that commitment because the needs remain urgent and the case for investment remains overwhelmingly strong. Now, I'm proud that the fund has been a cross-party endeavour, but I want to acknowledge, as my honourable friend did, the crucial role Labour has played in establishing and supporting it. It was under Tony Blair that the UK helped found the fund in 2002, recognising that tackling the world's deadliest diseases required global leadership. And under Gordon Brown, leadership as both Chancellor and later as Prime Minister, the UK strengthened its support with a focus on long-term funding and international cooperation. And that legacy is one of action, compassion and multilateralism that I know we will all want to uphold today. Like other colleagues, I want to speak for a moment about my constituency and its role in this, about Macclesfield, a town I'm proud to represent, and people will know it's a thriving town with a brilliant grassroots arts and culture scene nestled on the edge of the Peak District, but it's also a key centre for UK life sciences, with AstraZeneca, the major employer in Macclesfield, playing a vital role in the production and distribution of life-saving medicines. But their contribution goes beyond local jobs. They've supported the wider global health agenda, in particular working on the COVID vaccine and other initiatives to improve treatments in low and middle-income countries. And we know that our life sciences sector across the country, anchored by companies like AstraZeneca, benefit from the innovation, data sharing and global networks that initiatives like the Global Fund foster. This is what you call win-win. And let's not forget that the diseases we're talking about have not gone away. TB, as my honourable friend has pointed out, is one of the world's deadliest infectious diseases. Malaria continues to kill a child nearly every minute. AIDS, whilst more manageable, still devastates millions of families. So, Chair, our support is as important as it ever was. I urge all of us, and especially the Government, to continue to recognise the enormous value of the fund. And from the laboratories of Macclesfield to the clinics of Malawi, let's continue to make a difference.
Yeah. Thank you. Apologies, I will have to now reduce the time limit to 2 minutes. Laura Kirk-Smith, please.
And it's a pleasure to serve under your chairship, and I thank my honourable friend, the member for Milton Keynes, for bringing forward this debate. I'd like to declare an interest as the former UK Executive Director of International Rescue Committee, and today I'd like to focus on why GAVI and the Global Fund are so critical in humanitarian crises. But I do just want to be clear about why this matters and why the role they play in the world matters, because I'm extremely proud of the principled role that UK aid allows us to play in parts of the world that are riven by conflict, poverty and climate change, where we save lives and prevent future suffering, and I'm proud of the role of NGOs, British NGOs in that. But this is not just about charity. This is about global stability and security, and in turn our own stability and security. Because when diseases are left unchecked in fragile states, they don't stay contained. They cross borders, they become pandemics, they threaten and harm all of us as human beings, and they demand costly emergency responses here in the UK and abroad that could have been prevented through earlier interventions. I saw firsthand the way in which GAVI and the Global Fund work in humanitarian crises, in particular through the IRC's partnership with GAVI. In East Africa, despite the insecurity and the limitations on humanitarian access making vaccine delivery difficult, IRC was able to expand vaccine coverage. In 19 months, an IRC-led consortium funded by GAVI, powered by local partners, administered 9 million vaccine doses and put nearly 1 million children on the path to full immunisation, including 376,000 zero-dose children. As of January 2025, 96% of the 156 target communities had access to vaccines. Before the intervention, only 16% had. And the cost of delivering that was just $4 per person. This shows how by institutionalising this model of providing doses and funding directly to frontline actors, we can reach people outside of government control and deliver real impact even in some of the toughest and most fragile humanitarian settings.
Michael Payne.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, and can I also thank my honourable friend, the member for Milton Keynes, for securing this crucial debate. I'm proud, Madam Chair, to be the co-chair of the APPG on HIV and AIDS, a role the Minister held and carried out with distinction for more than 6 years in previous sessions of this Parliament. And through this APPG, we are fighting to keep the Global Fund at the top of the agenda in the Foreign Office and for this Government. At a reception in this place a few weeks ago, I was inspired that we were joined by so many people who have spent so much of their time fighting for the Global Fund and the critical work that it does. And I was particularly delighted that we were joined by the Minister in the Foreign and Commonwealth Development Office, Catherine West MP, a demonstration of the UK's commitment to this cause. We were also joined by the Deputy High Commissioner, Dineo Matloko, from the South African High Commission, likewise demonstrating South Africa's resolve. Madam Chair, as has been said earlier, since its inception in 2002, the Global Fund has helped save 65 million lives around the world. And if we are to continue to save lives from treatable diseases, the Global Fund must be replenished with critically needed funds this year. The Global Fund, Madam Chair, represents a coalition of the willing, and this coalition needs all of us to play our part. Because constant action is required, or we can and will fall back in our battle against HIV and AIDS. I agreed to become the co-chair of the APPG on HIV and AIDS, alongside a brilliant team of cross-party parliamentarians, some of whom are here today, because this is is a fight that matters and one we must win. AIDS is no longer an unrelenting reality that we have to endure, but a consequence of our collective failure to share the necessary knowledge, protection and medication with everyone who needs it. I'm delighted with the leadership of the Prime Minister and Foreign Secretary in co-hosting the replenishment this year. As Nelson Mandela said, AIDS is no longer just a disease, it is a human rights issue. Let us heed Mandela's words and do all we can to secure a successful replenishment of the Global Fund this year. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Sullivan.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. Ms Jardine, it's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship. I would like to thank my honourable friend, the member for Milton Keynes, for securing such an important debate, and it's proud to sit with her on the Science, Innovation and Select Committee. And I'd also like to pay tribute to the right honourable member for Dumfriesshire, Clydesdale and Tweedledale for his tireless work in this space as well. Before I became a Member of Parliament, I was a scientist. I worked on neglected diseases, in particular human African trypanosomiasis, also known as sleeping sickness, where I made a diagnostic test field ready and is out there diagnosing people as we speak. I then recently moved on to work on understanding the immune responses to malaria at the Francis Crick Institute with Dr. Jean Langhorne. And on a recent visit to the Liverpool School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine, we saw there the amazing science and innovation, lymphatic filariasis, and potentially using a device like this to be able to detect it. That is now being looked at for diabetes. So again, it just builds on the amazing work that we have science in this country. In a recent report, the impact of global health collaboration with the London School of Tropical Medicine showed that it generates a global societal return of £1.4 trillion. And that's £7.7 billion to this economy in the UK. So this is not just about protecting and saving lives across the globe. This is about our industry here in the UK. Now, malaria has been eliminated in 9 countries since 2015. It is incredible. We must go further. We can get the job done. So please, let's replenish that fund. Thank you.
Sam Rushworth.
Thank you. And can I thank my honourable friend, member for Milton Keynes Central, for securing this debate. I'm here to speak on behalf of constituents in Bishop Auckland who've asked me to call on the government to continue Britain's global leadership in fighting and eradicating killer diseases. And this requires a commitment not only to ongoing investment in the Global Fund, GAVI and UNITAID, but in leading other nations to do likewise. We're often far too doom and gloom, I think, about international aid and what it's achieved. Let's remember that since 1990, in fact, in 1990, 1 in 5 children born in sub-Saharan Africa died before they reached their 5th birthday. Today, that's 1 in 16. It's still too many. As many people know, I spent a portion of my life living in sub-Saharan Africa, including as a school teacher. My own eyes have wet my pillow at night as one of my students died from a preventable illness because they weren't able to access the treatment that they needed. And when I multiply that by the millions of children who've had that fate, what a tragic loss for the world. And as impressive as the lives saved, and let's be clear about this, a GAVI-supported country a child born in a GAVI-supported country is 70% less likely to die from a vaccine-preventable disease before their 5th birthday. The Global Fund, we know, has saved 65 million lives, and as impressive as that is the investment that this brings to Britain by supporting British science. And may I just say to the Minister, let's not roll back the progress of a quarter of a century.
Democrat spokesperson Monica Harding.
Thank you, Chair. It is indeed an honour to serve under your chairship, and I want to congratulate the member for Milton Keynes Central for securing this debate. This year, as both GAVI, the Vaccine Alliance, and the Global Fund conduct their funding replenishments, it is more important than ever that we consider the indispensable value of their work, both for Britain and for the world. Since its inception at the beginning of the millennium, GAVI has immunised more than 1 million children and saved in the region of 20 million lives. The UK was one of the Alliance's founders and have since constituted the largest single sovereign donor. The Global Fund, in its short existence, has succeeded in driving down the death rates across AIDS, TB and malaria by 61%, saving 65 million lives. That is close to the entire population of this country and would not have been achieved without British support, which manifested most recently in a £1 billion pledge to the Global Fund's 7th replenishment. This money is likely to avert around 1 million deaths. We have made so much progress, eliminating many diseases in some countries and reaching the edge of success in others. However, the work of GAVI and the Global Fund is being placed at risk by short-sighted cuts to international development spending. President Trump has gutted USAID, shattered the fund which fights HIV and AIDS, and is also poised to eliminate much American funding for global immunisation efforts. And following this playbook, this government has now decided to slash British development spending to 0.3% of our GNI, its lowest level this century. I still remember, as do many others, the optimism of the last Labour government who pledged to make poverty history and who funded GAVI and the Global Fund when they were created. This government has rejected so much of the proud 1997 legacy, and they must not do so when it comes to global health. So I hope they put money behind their pledge to prioritise global health and vaccination that they have asserted. There are so many strong and resonant moral arguments for Britain. But at the same time, the fight against disease serves concrete British interests. And the war against infection is currently facing an alignment of factors that make victory even more challenging than ever. Climate change is amplifying disease risk. Higher temperatures are opening up regions to mosquitoes, and the incidence of dangerous weather conditions is on the rise. Pakistan's catastrophic 2022 floods, for example, have since led to an almost 7 million additional malaria cases. And at the same time, the disturbing spread and intensification of conflict across the globe is impeding efforts to treat and prevent disease. Increasingly, civilian populations are being deliberately cut off from aid, and healthcare facilities are not only being disrupted, they are being targeted. And in consequence, we are seeing the return of once controlled diseases like polio and upticks in those like cholera, which emerge from degraded sanitary infrastructure. Why does this matter for Britain? Because, as we have heard, disease does not respect borders. Since COVID, all of us are only too aware that disease can reach our shores, putting both our NHS and our health security at risk. And resistance, particularly in strains of TB and malaria, is an increasing threat. Both GAVI and the Global Fund are working on the development and deployment of new generations of TB vaccines, even in the face of these new headwinds. Existing interventions for fighting malaria are also seeing their efficacy decline in the face of insecticide and drug resistance. Better, sharper tools have been developed. The challenge is now getting them where they are needed. And for that, we need the Global Fund. I will give way.
Iqbal Mohammed.
Honourable member give way. With my work before I came into this place in pharmaceutical industry and the whole safety, efficacy and regulatory compliance, does the member agree with me that the leadership role that the UK has played to date is not just limited to financial contributions and support, but it ensures that the vaccines that are rolled out in third world and low to middle income countries are as safe as they can be?
I absolutely agree with my honourable friend, and I was about to come to the trade benefit, the economic benefits of GAVI and the Global Fund. There are economic benefits. A study of GAVI-supported countries showed that through healthcare savings alone, each dollar spent returns 21. When wider social benefits are considered, this rises to 54. Accounting for trade opportunities for Britain, healthcare savings and other economic boosts, both GAVI and the Global Alliance have generated value equivalent to hundreds of billions of dollars. So neither charity nor a giant cash dispenser in the sky, but instead a deposit account for the security, health and soft power of our nation.
Will the honourable member give way?
I will give way.
I'm grateful to my honourable friend, and she's making an excellent speech. On that point about soft power, China tends to deploy its vaccines in accordance with its regional influence and global standing, rather than on the basis of where there is the greatest need. Does she share my concern that the withdrawal of Western funding from vaccine alliances could clear the way for China to engage in further vaccine diplomacy?
I thank my honourable friend for a point very well made. I have consistently said that cuts to our international aid and development spend creates the space for rogue actors, including China and including Russia, to move in. Now, I know the government like polling, so I am happy to share that the British people understand the value of spending on vaccination. Recent Adelphi polling found that 70% of our people believe that supporting global vaccine access benefits Britain. But it is not only about British funding, it is also about British leadership. Our expertise and our convening power have been continuous assets for GAVI and the Global Fund. I fear that the government's aid cuts have put this leadership at risk. So the government must work to reverse this trend. This year, along with South Africa, Britain will be hosting the Global Fund's replenishment efforts. As host nation, other countries and NGOs will look to us for leadership to make a significant pledge. And I hope we will step up. I want to say in closing a little bit more about what Britain's support means to others. I recently met with Botswana's Health Minister and the Special Ambassador of the African Leaders Malaria Alliance. They shared with me their pride at how the progress that has been made on AIDS, with related maternal mortality falling by 80%, and on bringing malaria to the threshold of elimination. They told me that the work of Britain in this success is always felt very warmly, and that it ties the two people and is an expression ultimately of humanity. They told me that the collaboration fuels trade and partnership. The Minister and the Ambassador worry so much that progress and so much investment risks reversing in the wake of a global aid retrenchment, including by Britain. They do not expect global support to last forever, but wrenching it away before countries have fully built up their own capacity is a destructive mistake that they and we will pay for. So, from these benches, I encourage this government to reaffirm our commitment and pledge generously to GAVI and the Global Fund. And I encourage the government to reaffirm our commitment and leadership in aid and reverse the savage cuts to our aid budget. This still new government must decide the Britain they want to deliver. Our wish is one bestriding the world stage, a development superpower, consolidating our massive progress and gains, firming our friendship, acting with compassion while delivering for our own people, security from conflict, disease, and controlling upstream migration to these shores. The space for leadership is now vacant, and I urge the government to fill it.
Opposition spokesperson Wendy Morton.
Thank you, Mrs Jardine, and it's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship today. Let me start by congratulating the Honourable Member for Milton Keynes Central on securing this debate today. And I'd just like to pay tribute also to my right honourable friend, the member for Dumfriesshire, Clydesdale and Tweedale. He's a powerful advocate for global health, and I think we can all see why today he's chosen to, or preferred to be on this side of the dais rather than where you are, Madam Chair. Because, of course, global health is everybody's health. This year we have significant replenishments of two organisations, GAVI and the Global Fund, who work on the front line to secure our populations against diseases which don't respect borders. GAVI, the Vaccine Alliance, is a unique alliance of governments, private sector foundations, civil society organisations and vaccine manufacturers. GAVI has vaccinated, as we've heard today, more than 1 billion children in 78 low-income countries and saved more than 18.8 million lives. In 2025, GAVI is seeking its 8th replenishment for its 5-year strategic period from 2026 to 2030. And this is an impressive organisation. And since being a Shadow Minister in November, I've been pleased to continue to regularly meet with GAVI and participate in roundtables as they approach this crucial milestone. The Global Fund, to fight AIDS, tuberculosis and malaria, invests in sustainable health systems to eradicate these 3 diseases. It has saved an estimated 65 million lives. Now, the Global Fund's 8th replenishment also is this year, and it will cover the funding period 2026 to 2028. Global health is a good example of a positive impact we can have with aid. If you take, for example, neglected tropical diseases, our science, technology and research sectors produced both of the world's first malaria vaccines to be recommended by the World Health Organization, Mosquirix and R21. And during my time as Minister for Global Health, I was fortunate enough to see UK expertise in infectious diseases at first hand during a visit to the Liverpool School of Tropical Medicine back in 2020. At that time, it was a Conservative government that announced £15.5 million to support the Liverpool School of Tropical Medicine's research on preventing the spread of infectious diseases such as tuberculosis and in strengthening health systems in fragile countries. The UK is often cited as a leader in global health. In fact, in answers to several of my written questions on this topic, the Minister knows these well, ministers start by saying the UK is one of the largest donors to GAVI. Before giving the reply, many honourable and right honourable members will be accustomed to that we need to wait until the spending review and all global health investments are being looked at in the round.
On that point, will the honourable member give way?
Yes, of course.
I thank the Shadow Secretary for giving way. GAVI relies heavily on philanthropic donations, notably the Melinda and Bill Gates Foundation. However, there are concerns that such donors may have a disproportionate influence on setting the priorities for global vaccine programs. So does she agree with me that any reduction or pulling back of the UK's support of these programs could exacerbate those concerns?
Mrs Jardine, I think what I would say on that is he's absolutely right that GAVI has the ability to pull in so many different donors. As to the specifics, following any ODA cuts, I think then perhaps those should be directed to the Minister to respond to. But I think it's a very good example of, as I say, how partnership can deliver for the benefit of some of the most vulnerable. Now, of course, it was previous governments, Conservative governments, who also made significant interventions that contributed to the UK's reputation as a global health leader. In 2015, we pledged £1.44 billion to GAVI over 5 years. Then in 2020, as we hosted the Global Vaccine Summit, we committed a further £1.65 billion. And during the last 2 Global Fund replenishments, we pledged £1 billion in 2022 and £1.46 billion in 2020. These pledges to GAVI and the Global Fund were just one part of our leadership on and efforts to strengthen global health, and an incredibly important one at that. Now, I note again from responses to my written questions that ministers are often quite keen in their answers to highlight our record on global health, but I would like to take the opportunity of today's debate to ask some further questions about theirs and about the government's record to date. Following the reduction in ODA to 0.3% of GNI, I'd like to ask the Minister, what does global health now look like at the strategic level of the FCDO? I think it would be helpful to us all to know where the priorities will be and if the government plans to continue the emphasis on multilateral NGOs such as GAVI and the Global Fund, or if other models are to be considered. Although the approach to global health may be changing under this Labour government, we still have the replenishments for GAVI and the Global Fund rapidly approaching. In fact, GAVI is literally weeks away. So I'd also welcome some clarity today from the Minister on what discussions he's had with representatives of both funds and with other donor nations, and I'd like to press him a little about the absence of any UK pledges to date. I've previously had no luck getting an answer on this through my written questions, so I'm going to have another go today. And I'd just like to press again and ask if he has considered the impact of this apparent delay from the UK in pledging on our international reputation and our standing as a leader in global health. Yes, of course.
The UK track record on this has been quite impressive, in that there are actually other countries in the world that frankly punch below their economic weight. And so it's not just about the UK contribution, but also about the role that we play in making sure that other countries shoulder their burden.
The honourable gentleman is absolutely right, and I recall during the last pledging, the replenishment, there were so many conversations going on to encourage other countries and other partners to step up to the plate, and that's why where the UK's leadership role really did have an impact at that time. But I'd also like to ask as well, in a similar vein, what is the potential impact on other countries making pledges? And is the Minister thinking about making a reduced commitment or no pledge at all? Because it would be helpful for other donors and NGOs themselves to know what the UK is doing so that they can plan rather than the ongoing uncertainty. The Minister will also be aware that there are a range of financial instruments available to him. One example is the International Finance Facility for Immunisation, also known as IFIM, through which £590 million of our £1.65 billion pledge in 2020 was distributed. IFIM accelerates the delivery of vaccines by making the money from long-term government donor pledges available immediately, so allowing GAVI to vaccinate more individuals and faster. So I'd be grateful if the Minister could update on any discussions he's had with GAVI and IFIM about its potential use to front-load any UK commitments. Very briefly.
I agree with what the honourable member is saying about what a good model that is, and I wonder if she agrees with me that that is a model the government could look to for other things. There has recently been an international finance facility on education release in the last few years, and does she agree with me that the government could be looking to adopt that model across a range of different issues as we look to find alternative forms of development finance?
I think that's a really interesting point, because if IFIM has proven what you can do, sort of working with other with instruments, so I would hope that the government will look at what the options are. But again, I'm sure the Minister will be able to share. It's not for me to answer what the government should be doing, but perhaps the Minister, in his summing up, may take a view on that. So as I start to bring my comments to a conclusion, the global landscape of development is changing. We can see that across the rest of the world. For example, the US, for so long an important anchor donor for a number of global health initiatives, has made dramatic reductions to USAID. So I'd be helpful to know what discussions the Minister has had with US counterparts and other donor countries about coordinating our efforts so that we can maximise value for money in the global health spend. And finally, I will conclude, Mrs Jardine, in the way I started. Global health is everybody's health, and I pay enormous tribute to the Global Fund and GAVI, who harness the power of donations from taxpayers in countries like the UK to end preventable deaths from treatable diseases in some of the most vulnerable parts of the world. Global health may sometimes seem like an abstract concept, but we only have to look back on recent history to see that infectious diseases do not respect borders, and global solutions are needed to keep us all safe.
Minister Dozy.
Well, thank you, Ms Jardine, and it's a genuine pleasure to serve under your chairpersonship, and indeed to be able to respond to such a passionate and well-attended debate on a subject that many of the members here will know is close to my own heart. And I'm particularly grateful to my honourable friend, the member for Milton Keynes Central, for securing this debate. She, of course, as well as being an excellent representative of Milton Keynes, has many connections with me, indeed my own constituency in Penarth, and I too have connections with Milton Keynes. That link with this debate, because it was in Milton Keynes that I first worked for World Vision, the International Humanitarian and Development NGO, and particularly worked on the issues of HIV and AIDS, and saw for myself on a visit with them back in the early 2000s in Malawi, in very, very different times when we hadn't made some of the progress that we've made today, the devastating impact that HIV AIDS was having on communities in southern Africa. And I remember sitting with a woman in a village who had had to take on the children of her sister, having lost her sister in her 20s, and then struggling to make ends meet, and then taking on the children of her sibling on top of that as well. Really stark stuff that I will never forget. But also in my own career worked on these issues, and indeed was at one of the early launches of the IFIM bonds with Gordon Brown, and many of the other efforts that she rightly points to that we should be very proud of under the last Labour government. And indeed too, I served as the co-chair of the All-Party Group on HIV and AIDS, and it's fantastic to see some of my successors in that role. One of Parliament's longest all-party groups, and one of the most impactful, I can genuinely say, over many, many decades and still doing important work today. So this is absolutely a timely moment with the GAVI and Global Fund replenishments coming up this year, and I'm hugely grateful to all of the contributions and input that members have made today. I can absolutely assure that the government hears them. They're being communicated with my colleague Minister Chapman in the other place, and then we will look very closely at a number of the points that have been raised today, because we should indeed be very, very proud of our remarkable achievements over the last 20 years, and we must maintain this positive trajectory, including increasing life expectancy and stopping the spread of pandemics. As has been said many times, disease respects no borders, and of course it has a devastating impact not only on lives but also on economies, and indeed of course that life-saving research also has a benefit economically, as many honourable members have pointed out. So I can confirm, Dr Hook, the UK will continue to champion global health anchored by the Sustainable Development Goals as our lodestar, and our partnerships with GAVI and the Global Fund are crucial in maintaining and accelerating progress. Of course, we are founding members and committed supporters of both organisations. The Global Fund plays a crucial role, and I've worked with it on many times in the past, in strengthening health systems and combating HIV and AIDS, TB and malaria. And of course, it also supports the UK's goal to end all new HIV cases in England by 2030, and indeed efforts across the United Kingdom in that regard. Malaria, which has been rightly referred to, which primarily affects women and children, puts a significant strain on health systems and hinders economic growth. Nigeria, for example, accounts for more than a quarter of global malaria cases and loses more than $1 billion annually to the disease, as well as the devastating impact on lives and families. Our partnership with the Global Fund demonstrates the importance we place on working in partnership with others around the world and in the Global South. And together we've saved a remarkable 65 million lives and reduced deaths by AIDS, TB and malaria by more than 60%. And we've also built more resilient and sustainable health systems and accelerated progress towards universal healthcare coverage. On GAVI, also a hugely important organisation that I've had the pleasure of seeing the work of both in this country and elsewhere. This is, of course, a public-private partnership with national governments, the WHO, UNICEF and civil society, and of course that's critical. Those connections were spoken of by many members in procuring and providing affordable vaccines. And through GAVI, more than half the world's children are now vaccinated against some of the world's deadliest diseases like measles, malaria and meningitis, saving more than 18 million lives. And it's been pointed out that today a child born in a GAVI-supported country is 70% less likely to die from a vaccine-preventable disease before their 5th birthday than before the existence of that crucial alliance. And of course, every investment brings economic benefits too. For every pound in investment in immunisation, we see £54 in wider economic benefits. So we're working with GAVI and with other donors, including the Gates Foundation, to reach more children with life-saving vaccines than ever before. And of course, the investments in GAVI and the Global Fund also drive real innovation, Dr Hook. British expertise has transformed the fight against HIV and AIDS, TB and malaria through licensing, technology transfer, and by developing innovative technologies such as new dual-active ingredient bed nets, piloted with support from UNITAID and the Global Fund, and now being rolled out at scale by the Global Fund, and also investment has supported the development of vaccines such as Men5 to protect against the 5 main types of meningitis. And GAVI delivered 5.1 million doses of Men5 in Niger and Nigeria.
The Minister made a passing reference, which I think a number of other members did, to unit aid, but will he more formally acknowledge the huge importance of unit aid in ensuring the delivery of medicines in some of the most difficult environments around the world?
I absolutely will, and it's referenced throughout my briefings because of that important partnership that we have with UNITAID in so many contexts, and indeed have seen their work as well myself. So we're delighted we're going to be co-hosting the Global Fund's 8th replenishment with South Africa. We aim to attract and deepen investor engagement, sustain collective investments and collaborate with the private sector on financing, innovation and supply chain support. And we will do everything possible to ensure the success of that replenishment. And indeed, last month, the Children's Investment Fund Foundation made an impressive first pledge of $150 million, a 5-fold increase from their previous investment. And that extraordinary commitment, I think, underscores the significant role of private philanthropy too in advancing global health equity and the power of partnership. And as countries work to increase domestic financing, we must stand together and strive for success in those replenishments. And we know this is an incredibly important moment in all these issues. Now, many members have rightly asked me about financial commitments today, and I've heard the voices very, very strongly around this room. Members will understand, Dr Hook, that we cannot make any financial commitments for the next replenishments until after the spending review is complete, but we will continue, and I want to assure members of this, to champion the Global Fund and GAVI and the people they serve and many of the issues that have been raised today. So I can assure them their voices have been heard and the voices of their constituents on these issues. These are not decisions any of us wanted to make about cuts to the ODA budget, not least given the record of success that we've had on these issues. But I can also say that when I look at some of the things I do every day, they are the right choices. They're very difficult choices. We remain committed, however, to international development and particularly to global health. And I think the number of interventions on these issues have made that very clear across the House. I'll reply briefly to some of the specific points made. My honourable friend from Milton Keynes Central spoke about the wider benefits, not only to the economy, but also actually in terms of our research and the links that there were then to the COVID vaccine research. I actually saw some of that in pioneering RNA vaccine research myself in visits with the all-party group years ago, and then to see that expertise used to then combat that deadly pandemic was absolutely extraordinary. My honourable friend and successor rightly talked about this being investment, not charity, and indeed the proven track record of the Global Fund and GAVI and indeed UNITAID. I think that's consensus on that across the House. My honourable friend from Exeter mentioned his visit to Kenya and the links with nutrition as well, and he knows the government's commitment to the Global Compact on nutrition and the work that was done around the summit and indeed the research in his own constituency. The honourable member from North East Fife, St Andrews, also a place I know well, having done my masters in St Andrews. Again, important work being done at that university, and indeed in many institutions across the UK. My honourable friend from Norwich North really asked the important questions about women and girls, and absolutely I can ensure her that in terms of our global health work, women and girls remain at the heart of that. Indeed, GAVI, of course, supports countries with vaccines that directly benefit girls and women, for example, against HPV, which, of course, we know is one of the leading causes of cervical cancer, and over 85%, it's a really shocking figure, of cervical cancer deaths are in low-income countries, and it's the main cause of death amongst many young women in Africa. So women and girls will remain at the heart of these partnerships going forward. My honourable friend from Strangford, who's no longer with us, as ever spoke passionately on the issues. My honourable friend from Ashford spoke about the importance on work on TB, and of course we are absolutely committed to this as well, and whether that's through the Global Fund or through Stop TB partnerships or our work with the TB Alliance, there are many pieces of work in research and indeed operations that we are doing. My honourable friend from Macclesfield spoke about malaria, as did others. Now, of course, on malaria, there is really remarkable progress being made there in terms of malaria vaccines, and it looks like some of the early findings from the malaria vaccine implementation programme show that an additional 1 in 8 children can be prevented from dying if they receive vaccines in combination with other malaria interventions. And of course, we carry on the important work on anti-malarial bed nets and other interventions. My honourable friend from Gedling, another one of my successors in the APPG for HIV and AIDS, again spoke of the importance of the Global Fund, and I completely agree with him. And indeed, my honourable friend also spoke about her experience working in the Francis Crick Institute, another leading institution, doing incredible work. We should be very proud of our academics and researchers in this country for what they do. My honourable friend from Bishop Auckland, a powerful voice for his constituents, and also spoke of his own personal experiences in sub-Saharan Africa. Finally, the honourable lady tried to tempt me. I won't next time. We're just about to run out of time, and I need to leave time for my honourable friend to respond. But the shadow spokespeople obviously raised a number of choices. I do have to gently say to my honourable friend opposite from the Liberal Democrats, we are not in 1997. We're in a very different set of world circumstances, and that is very tough. But I believe in being honest with this House about the challenges that we do face. But that does not mean that we lose our commitment to development or that we lose our commitment to global health, and that's very clear from what the government has been setting out. And I've listened very clearly to what everybody said today. And of course, the Shadow Minister, and not only served as the Minister, but also we served on the IDC together. She rightly talks about that important role IFIM and others can play. I might write to her more specifically on the plans on IFIM. She asked me lots of questions about spending review. I know I would love to be tempted to answer her, but I can't, and I refer her to my previous answers. However, Dr Hook, can I just conclude and just say the UK continues and will continue to champion global health at a critical moment, and we work hard together with our partners. We've heard about some fantastic work that we've been responsible for, some fantastic organisations, and I can assure you that the government hears all of those voices, and they will be contemplated as we make some challenging but important decisions over the weeks and months ahead.
Thank you, Dr Hapka. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairpersonship. I don't have much time to sum up, so I won't go through and respond to each and every intervention that was here, but just to say a huge thank you. I am so pleased to hear that we continue to have cross-party alliance and cross-party support for our work on the Global Fund and GAVI. The reason for that is because we've heard right the way across, this is about our health, our global health, and our growth in this country. We are world leaders, and given the fact that the Prime Minister said that the cuts in the ODA budget, we would try and work to increase that budget as soon as possible. What I don't want to see is that we make decisions today that not only put our global leadership at risk, but put the lives of millions of people at risk. And that is something that was echoed by 150 scientists that signed a letter and was published this week as well, echoed by UK companies and that support the jobs in the UK on it, and echoed by the various interventions that we've had, including from the Minister and Ambassador from Botswana, who I also had the pleasure to meet. So this is an opportunity for us to decide, are we going to continue to be a UK that looks out, understands that we live in a global world and puts biosecurity, the health of our population and the health of the world at absolutely the heart of our strategy, or are we somebody who's going to step back from that global leadership? I hope that we will absolutely be at the forefront of this debate, of the leadership, and ensuring not only our contribution stays the same, but each and every other country's contribution stays the same, as well as those other donors. Thank you very much to the Minister for responding today, and I know how much he feels and agrees with many of the comments today, and I look forward to us continuing to work together. Thank you.
So this House has considered funding for GAVI, the Vaccine Alliance and Global Fund. As many as are of that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it.